In sewing a dart, what we have to realize is that the marking should go on the wrong side of the fabric. Because the dart is sewn on the wrong side, sometimes they're sewn on the right side, but that's kind of a special case. Usually I see it on pants and in the sleeves in most sporting wear. I don't know why, but sometimes we see darts on the outside. But in this case, we are actually going to sew the dart on the inside of the fabric, or the wrong side. So I've marked this as being the wrong side. So what I do, and I've just made this up, I've made a 3 centimeter base and a 12 centimeter length. So in the middle, which is at 1.5, I've just arbitrarily marked 12 centimeters as the apex, and then I join the lines, and I'm going to show these in succession so they're the exact same size. But as you will notice, most of the time darts are actually, in my experience, isosceles triangles. They have two lengths of the same. In this case it's 12 centimeters, so the base and the length, they're usually isosceles triangles. There are some that are a little bit different and are kind of on a seam, or they don't exactly fit this criteria, but normally in my case they are isosceles triangles. So what I do when I sew my darts is quite simple. In this case, this example works for me, is that I mark it clearly, and if it's something that's an air fade eraser or whatever on a more delicate fabric, I certainly should baste these up right away, because once I have that basting line, I will always have the reference to where the dart was, so I don't have to go back and remark it and find all my points again. But in this case, what I do is that for wrong sides together, I then baste the lines exactly matching up to the tip. And I would suggest that if you had to, you could use a long machine based stitch, but the point of my exercise is to hand baste it. And since darts aren't very big anyway on the most part, it doesn't take a lot of time to do it this way. And the reason why I also hand baste the lines together is because when I do the permanent stitch on the placement line, the basting will be very easy to remove. And when I do use a color of basting thread that isn't supposed to belong to the finished product, or it's an off color, you know it's not supposed to be there, so you're always going to see it in the end. If you forget to take it out, you can see that it doesn't belong there. So please, when you're hand basting, use a thread color that doesn't exactly work well with what you're using. So on to the next part. We will then hand baste from the base to the apex the actual line of basting. Now I'm going to start hand basting these two lines together, and remembering that this is the wrong side facing out, and that you're actually hand basting right sides together. So let's do this. It's quite simple. I've marked this with a blue marker because it's just kind of easier to see on white fabric. And as you can see, once you start joining up your basting lines together, you'll notice that on a more woven fabric, it's very easy to join them together. Sometimes it takes a little bit of work trying to get the lines to match up, but you know, that's okay. This is part of the fun. So you don't have to do a very uniform stitch when you're basting. I'm doing them rather large because, as I said, I need to remove them quite easily. And so if they're very small, you're going to have a harder time taking these hand basting stitches out of there. So what I'm working with here as a sample piece is a linen rayon blend, and linen tends to be very forgivable fabric. It's so easy to work with, and it's a natural fabric, so you know it's easy to linen's notorious for having to iron all the time, but it's a very nice and light fabric to work with, and it's quite versatile. So I'm just going to, use this, and it's white so we can all see. And you see here I've got the tip of the dart. I'm just going to very slowly get that in line as my last stitch, and make sure you know where your last stitch is, because like I said, on other fabrics where you might lose your initial trace, you may have to make sure where the end of this is with your basting as well, because that might also be gone. Now make a very loose knot. Don't make a point of making a really tight knot, because you're going to take it out so soon after the fact. So basically that is my basted dart, and when you're done you'll see that this will be the wrong side and this will be the right side, and then we're on our way to doing the permanent stitch on this line. Okay, now we're ready to sew the permanent stitch into our dart. Now I've used a contrasting thread. It is black, so you can see what I'm doing. And normally you would never do this. Your sewing thread should be the same color as your fabric, because on the right side you don't kind of want it to show. So what I do is I match up the basting line or the marked line as best as I can, and I go from there. So let's sew this down. Okay, so a couple of back stitches at the base, and then we are ready to roll. Okay, here we go. If you can still see your marked line, that would be awesome. Otherwise you can sew pretty much directly on or right beside the basting line. It's off by a millimeter. It's not going to make a huge difference. But this is what we do at the apex. When we get there, you're going to sew off. Okay, don't do a reverse stitch at the apex. What we do is we're going to leave ourselves a bit of a tail. That should be long enough. What you then want to do is you want to take the permanent thread stitch and separate the two threads, bobbin and top thread, and make 2 or 3 knots. Now if you have another method, that's great. This is what I always do. I've done something else in the past, but it wasn't working out too well for me. I would make a little loop, but I don't know, it didn't work out. So we're going to go with this for now. So as soon as I get my hands working here, let's tie this. So there's 1. Okay, let me do it again. Now 2 to 3 is optimal. You don't have to really do more than that, and it should be alright. So this is a little bit of a slippery surface. So there's the second one, and let's stop there, because that, for me, that's good enough for now. But go and do a third one if you wish. Now when you cut your tail at the apex, don't cut it right there. Leave about a centimeter tail. That should be long enough. And then what we do is we then proceed to cut up here where we started, because we don't really need those anymore. And then we're going to remove this basting stitch. So let me just get out a seam ripper and start removing these basting stitches. And this is the easy part, because if you sew on a knot exactly, it might be a little bit hard to take out, but as you can see, it's not really. It's just me and my hands here working against me. But when you start removing your basting stitches, then your start is all right and ready to go. And once that's done, see, this is another problem here, and this is why I say not to tie it too tightly at the apex. Yeah, don't do that, because you will get a bit of a problem and you'll be fussing through the knot that you made with your permanent thread. So yeah, not too tight. So now on your right side, it's all sewn down, And of course you can see the stitching here, but on a regular garment you would not see that because it would be the same color as your fabric. So now all you have to do is press this. So we'll go press that after this. Okay, so the last part of the dart process and the construction is to press it flat. So this rayon linen blend is quite easy to work with, and it's so forgivable in terms of construction and ease of use. I find that linen is always needing to be ironed, but at the same time, since it's a plant-based fiber, you will find that it is just a dream to work with. So basically what we want to look at is what we've done and why we did it. Here we have our basted line where we marked it on the fabric from the pattern piece, and it all lines up pretty good. The contrasting fabric doesn't make it look that much better, but for show we can see what it's doing and how we did it. And at the tip, as we can also see, this is also important when it comes to darts, it has the tip pressed towards the rest of the direction of the fabric, and sometimes if it's a very small dart, this tip might not press quite flat, and that's kind of a bummer. But on the other hand, if it lies flat, you're good. Now at the top here of a garment piece, it could be the waistband or where you attach the bodice to where you're making a dress, this should line flush with the rest of the pattern piece, because when you want to finish this piece, if you are constructing an unlined garment, you might want to finish that. And so you would just run your serger, if you're using a serger, right across, or if you use a zigzag stitch, you'll lie it flat down. Sometimes if you're not pressed down flat enough, it could turn back on you, and then you'll have a little bit more bulk than what you want. So that's good too. So basically here we just have a very well completed dart. It's pressed flat, it lies all flat, and the tip is sewn sturdy enough that it doesn't cause a little funnel, like it looks like it's separating. And that's what we don't want. And I've seen that happen a lot on some of my garments, and it's kind of like, you know, doesn't look greatest. Other than that, if you sew off your line and you have a corresponding piece on the back, like on a skirt where you have a zipper, you know, sometimes these darts won't be exactly symmetrical or mirror images of themselves. So this is what we do want. We want to use our hand basting techniques to make sure it's as on the line as it can be, so that both of your darts on corresponding pieces will fit your overall garment, so that it will fit better and you won't be offline when you match seams and darts from other pieces. So that is very important. And I know I've seen this happen on my own in the past, and this is why I changed to hand basting this. So if you want to tweak your own method or add to it, completely change the way you do stuff, that's fine. It's all up to you. But on the other hand, this is really helpful for me, and I hope it was for you. So this tutorial is pretty much it, and I will see you in the next tutorial, and we'll go from there. Okay, bye now.